So tell us a little bit about how you got started in hypnotherapy and or regression therapy.
I became first interested in hypnosis back in I would say about the mid-50s. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and I come from an aviation family. Aviation and farming that's a big duck farm area where I'm from. But my family owned an airport at the time, and my father was a fighter pilot during the war, Second World War, and he used hypnosis to help his students pass the FAA flight exam, both the written and the practical exam, the actual flight exam. I used to watch him do it. I used to watch him hypnotize people. And I became interested in it. And the way I first learned about reincarnation was I was going through his, on the attic of his books, and I came across a book called The Search for Bridie Murphy, which was a seminal book in the field, where it talks about a amateur hypnotist named Maury Bernstein, who hypnotized a young lady, and she spoke of a life she had in the 1800s in Ireland. And her name was Bridie Murphy. And I asked him about it, and we talked about. He explained what reincarnation was to me, and he believed in it. He was a fighter pilot during the war, and he flew the P-51. He went down the English Channel and spent some time on the beach in Nazi-occupied France, and that's another story. But he survived that. He always believed that in the First World War, in another lifetime, he was a fighter pilot who went down in flames over.
I got goosebumps.
Over France, you know. Now, did the Red Baron shoot him down? I don't know. But what's ironic is that in the next lifetime, this lifetime, he went down again, but this time he survived. His engine quit. His engine conked out. Didn't get shot down this time, but his engine conked out. So I got interested in it, and I guess so around 69 or 70, and I had done a lot of reading. And I was sitting with having a cup of coffee with a cousin. I was back from Hawaii. I went to University of Hawaii. I was back from Hawaii, and her name was Carol, by the way. We were like brother and sister, but she was my cousin. And she just passed last year. And we were always interested in, let's call it the mantic arts, astrology, and we used to play with the Ouija board, the whole family. We had a great time with that thing. And we talked about reincarnation. And I've been doing, she said, do you think you can do it? I said, yeah, I think I can do it. And so I did it. I regressed her. You know the old saying, God protects fools and drunks. And I didn't know what I was doing. Thank God I didn't do too much damage. And then at the University of Hawaii, I was doing hypnosis with my students, or with my fellow students, helping them pass the exam. And then because I was interested in past life regression, I started regressing some of them over there. And so I would say hypnotherapy, and for me, hypnotherapy and the past life regression went hand in glove. And I got into this professionally in 1978.
Wow. Both
hypnotherapy and past life regression.
That is an amazing story. It feels what we call dharmic, that you were meant to do this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can you explain like the difference between hypnotherapy and past life regression?
So did you hear that question?
Yeah, yes. No, well, hypnotherapy, hypnosis is simply a vehicle to get the people to access past lives. Hypnosis is another word for guided. Most people access past lives, I would say, through what they call meditation, guided meditation.
Right.
Well, hypnosis is no different than guided meditation. Guided meditation is just another word for hypnosis. You can only reach certain levels of brainwave states. And both guided meditation and hypnosis take you to those brainwave levels where past life memories are accessible. The other way, of course, is through spontaneous memories. And hypnotherapy is simply the practical use of the state of hypnosis.
Thank you.
Right. And so hypnosis is used to get people into that relaxed state where past life memories are accessible.
Okay.
Great. I love that answer. And I love the question too. I invite questions. So anybody who has a question also online, just raise your hand and we'll get to that. So now let us get down to the nitty gritty. What inspired you? Because the book was only published in 2017, if I remember right. So you've been at it for many, many years. What inspired you to write your book?
What inspired me, because I wasn't finding anything out there that did blend the East to the West. Most of the things out there, when, pardon my expression, were too woo for me. I was looking for something that might look for practical explanations for the phenomena that is obtained within past life regression. So I wanted to give both sides of the story. I gave evidence against past lives, and I talk about evidence for past lives in that book. Now, admittedly, it's difficult for me to do because I do have a bias toward the belief in reincarnation. But I also admit that there are other explanations for the phenomena that is obtained under hypnosis or meditation. The past life phenomena that we have to look at too. You know, whether the genetic memories or if it's what's called cryptomnesia, you remembered something that you don't remember how you remembered it or where you learned it, and then it comes out under hypnosis as a past life regression. But I found that most of these you could find there were explanations for that. No, there were times there are regressions that I've done, many regressions that are obviously fabrication, obviously. Fantasy. Now, probably unintentional fabrication. I don't think anybody, and no one's going to come into this and pay you money so they can tell you lies. Okay? So it's unintentional.
Good point.
But then on the other side, there's those ones that give you goosebumps.
Yeah.
And that are verifiable. That the details come out that there's no way that's that person. Come on, you're stretching the bounds of credulity to think that some of this stuff, well, maybe it is, maybe they're psychically perceiving it, but that's a strange explanation too, just as strange as reincarnation itself.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on one second. I'm going to swing around to Bob. He's got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Look this
I
way.
just read a book about Edgar Casey, the psychic. So when you just mentioned that, I'm curious, what is there, or is there a connection with what you've been talking about and what he did? Because I mean, reading it, I'm like, wow, I had no idea the depth and breadth of his abilities and readings.
Yeah, the only the fact that he was also a believer in reincarnation. By the way,
But he didn't start out that way.
no, he did not, but he did write about it later on. By the way, he is from your neck of the woods, so to speak, and not too far.
Well, he had, Virginia Beach is where.
Virginia Beach. I was presenting at a convention. I know I was presenting at a convention there many years ago, Virginia Beach, and I took the opportunity to visit Casey's place. Found it fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I'm doing some research about him right now. And so he was doing his readings for many years. And it wasn't until he did had a session with this guy Palmer, who asked him these questions that Casey had not heard before. And part of it was, about reincarnation, and of course Casey went into a trance when he did his sessions, and the answers came out, they were recorded, and so that first time he didn't even believe the answers that came forward, but more and more things happen, and they were able to validate certain things, and so he became a believer.
It is so much easier now to validate than it was when I first started.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you had to spend hours in a library. Now it takes you 10 minutes on Google. to find
Yeah.
Where else?
why. There was a town, such a town in outer Slobovia that in that time frame, and there was a person who of this name who lived there. So, so that is. It's much easier to validate now and verify.
Yeah. And you know, isn't it just wonderful that technology and interconnectedness is really making all of this happen that much more. So, yeah, I love it. So out of your book, what was your favorite story, that character that you wrote about?
There were two in there. The one is the fellow who came to me didn't even come to me for past lives, came to me for memory and recall. He was had to take some exams, and he was sitting there and he's squirming in his chair. And I says, "Is the chair not comfortable?" He said, "No, I'm fine. I just got something wrong with the back. So the doctors can't figure it out what the pain is." And he had mentioned to me about. He said, "I wonder, do you know anything about past life regression?" I said, "Well, it just so happens that I do." So I heard that some things like this can be related. And I said, "Well, would you like to do that?" So I brought him back the next week. We did and he also said, I always like looking behind my back. Okay, I'm very suspicious of people. I said, well, maybe. So okay. So anyway, we took him. He went back to the 1800s Colorado as a fur trapper. And he was encroaching on the Indian lands, and the Indians didn't like it. So they, but they were fair about it. They had a powwow, brought him to the reservation, and they reached agreement. Everybody smoked the peace pipe, and they reached an agreement. And he was on his way to his horse, and a renegade, an Indian who did not like the white man and was not in favor of any treaties with the white man, snuck up behind him, tomahawked him in the back. And so he died a horrible, lingering death, painful. The medicine men couldn't save him. So and as soon as he relived that under hypnosis, his pain was gone. And also his paranoid attitude of always looking behind his back, trying to cover his back. And then there is the one with which I always got this. This was a fellow I used. I also teach past life regression as a career. Some people want to do it. And back then, I guess I was in Santa Cruz, California. And one of my students, who had also taken my clinical hypnotherapy course, came for the past life regression. I used him as an example, and he went back. He had a problem. So I said, well, we're going to demonstrate past life therapy. What problem do you want to work on? He says, I want to become a motivational speaker, but I got one little thing that's holding me back. I have fear of public speaking. I said, let's take a look. So we went back to a lifetime in ancient Rome, where he was the announcer at the Colosseum. It was his job to get up in front of 50,000 people and the emperor, unroll a scroll, and and read the events of the day. Whatever, gladiators dismembering each other, or lions eating Christians, and the second quarter, whatever. So anyway, his friends played a joke on him and gave him the blank scroll. And he got out there in the middle of the Colosseum, unrolled it, and there was nothing there. He got so nervous. And there's the emperor sitting up there, and who knows? He was afraid he could get a thumbs down from the emperor. So when he relived that, then he overcame his fear of public speaking and became one of the top motivational speakers in the Hispanic market.
That's awesome.
I can tell you about.
That's a good point, because so many people think that the memories are all about, fearful experiences. But what you're bringing up is that it also helps us excel, hone our skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, everybody thinks of that as being the fears and phobias. I'm afraid of water because I died on the Titanic. Well, 1,500 people went down on the Titanic, but there's probably thousands who think that they were on the Titanic in a past life. But whatever, if the subconscious mind comes up with that, then that's fine. If that's able to cure them, that's fine too.
Now, you said there was a second story in your book that you really
Yeah, I gave you two. The one with the fellow with the fur trapper.
okay,
Also,
yeah.
this other one.
Oh, they're
the
two
other
different
fellow, yeah.
people. Okay.
And
Super.
there's some things you'll find things in there, not that I necessarily did, but I went into the literature and came up with some famous people who seem to have come around again.
Oh, tell us some. Tell us some.
Okay, one was, now, if you're a baseball fan, you certainly know who Lou Gehrig was, the pride of the Yankees, first baseman, New York Yankees, the Iron Man, played a record that was only recently eclipsed for a number of consecutive games played. And there was a young fellow here, I think it was up in LA, and about 3 or 4 years old, he was showing tremendous talent for baseball, whatever, Pee Wee League or whatever they call it. But he also started telling stories about when he was big and when he used to travel by train through with a team through all these places. And he told a story about being friends with he says, I think the guy's name was Babe something, right? Yeah, Babe Ruth. Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth were best of friends. And the kid knew that they had a falling out. They didn't speak for a number of years.
Wow.
He came out with some incredible details that were corroborated. So who knows? Lou Gehrig might have come around again. One of the greatest golfers in history, Bobby Jones, was a great amateur golfer. And one child exhibited some incredible talent at golfing at a very young age, and had memories of Bobby Jones memories where he lived. The fellow who wrote the screenplay for Gone with the Wind, apparently he used to come around again too. And then there was that young fellow, most famous is that James Leininger, his name was.
Oh, right.
You know about him, who was a fighter, who apparently in another life was a fighter pilot during the war, in the Navy during the war, and died in the Navy. There's so many of those out there. Particularly the one I like is one that was on Katie Couric. I think his name was Robert Snow, if I remember correctly, who was a police detective. He was a homicide detective. And he tells a story about, he was at a party and somebody was doing past life regressions. And he said, I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in this stuff. You want to try me? Go ahead. So he told a story about living as a painter, an artist, in I guess with 1800s or early 1900s in New York City. And he came up with such incredible details that he says, look, I'm a detective. I know how to research this. So he put his detective skills to work and corroborated that, to 90% of what he said was the case. And he was able to find those evidence of that.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Have you ever bumped up against anyone that you could not hypnotize? That question gets asked
No,
for me a lot.
everybody can be hypnotized, and I want to put that to rest. Everybody can be hypnotized. Not everybody will be hypnotized. You can resist it if you understand. If you understand the myths behind hypnosis, that means you're weak-willed. No, it's just the opposite. The stronger your imagination, the stronger your will, the more hypnotizable you are. That you can get stuck in hypnosis. Well, that's impossible. Okay, I've never seen a death certificate signed cause of death hypnosis. You can't Actually, I'm not being facetious when I say this. Please understand this. The only people who they used to say cannot be hypnotized are people who are clinically speaking morons, imbeciles, or idiots. Their IQ has to be below 40 before they cannot be hypnotized. When you understand that all hypnosis is a particular level of brainwave activity that we all go through every day. It can be alpha, theta, or delta. And each of us goes into and out of alpha on the average of 5 to 30 times a minute. So from 5 to 30 times a minute, you are being hypnotized. Doesn't mean that you can be hypnotized to get up on stage and quack like a duck. See, that's another thing that prevents people from doing this. I think they can't be hypnotized. Oh, I went to this guy at a nightclub years ago, and he got me up on stage, and he couldn't use me. I didn't do anything. I wouldn't quack like a duck, but the other people did. But you have to remember that people who go to a show, a stage show, particularly in a nightclub, they all volunteer to get up on stage, don't they? The hypnotist asks for volunteers. They say, take me, and they go up there. And so they're there to have fun. They volunteer. He does things with them called suggestibility test, which tells him that they're capable of a really deep level of hypnosis, which can sometimes remove a person's inhibitions. Those people who do not pass those tests, he says to them, well, thank you for volunteering. We won't be needing you today. Please have a seat. He gets paid to put on a good show. So he's working with a stacked deck. So if people see this and say, well, I can't be hypnotized, I'd never do that.
That is a great explanation. I can't wait for more people to hear that.
The same person who would do that and get up and quack like a duck or walk like a dog, you know, a lot of those people are 3 feet to the wind anyway. They haven't had a few.
Yeah.
That's the same person who, you know, the old story, puts a lampshade on his head and dances around the room with it at a party after having a few drinks.
I bet a lot of those could use that excuse. I got hypnotized for those actions, right?
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Yeah, they use that as an excuse. This is something they always wanted to do. They always wanted to show off. I will say this, that person who gets up there and does his Elvis imitation is going to be a better Elvis with hypnosis than they are out of hypnosis, because it
Wow,
brings
that's an
their
interesting
creativity.
one.
Yeah.
Now, I forgot to mention in the introduction that Bruce is known as the therapist for the stars. So tell us about some of your experiences there.
Well, they don't want me to use their names, but I will say that, I mean, I'm not allowed to use their names.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had one fellow years ago, who came to us years ago, and him and his brother were on a famous show during the 50s and the 60s. And his brother was a teenage idol and a heartthrob, and he came to us to stop smoking. And his complaint, and his mother and father were famous too in the big band during the big band era. And he came and says, you know, he says, I'm 42 years old, and my mother is 85 years old. She smokes like a fiend, drinks like a fish, and is healthy as a horse. I'm 42 years old, and the doctor tells me I have to stop smoking. So yeah, he came to us. We had a string of about 18 offices in LA and Orange County, and this was at an office up in Westwood, which is Van Nuys. It was Van Nuys where the studios are in the valley. So we've had those. We've had singers, some famous jazz singers. I had one lady, who was that wasn't too long ago. She was in a very famous movie about a bunch of birds that attacked people. And so by saying that, I think you know what movie I mean.
Got a hint about that one, yeah.
Yeah, a bail tent.
Yeah.
And I've worked with them up there too. For believe it or not, some of these people do have stage fright. Some, you know, rock stars, actors, television people who have to get up there and do their thing. And people say, well, they do it all the time. No, not necessarily. So they do have stage fright. Also, we work on people. I work on people who have trouble remembering their lines. So with that, memory and concentration.
Oh, yeah. So skills practice.
Yeah, indeed.
Great. And how about yourself? Have you remembered past lives?
Yeah, I did. I was just regressed not too long ago by a friend and colleague of mine who also has written a best-selling book. She's in Australia, and her name is Tony. And Tony, she asked me to sit in on her class and help with the students. And when I did that, she says, can I regress you? I said, yeah, sure, it's great. Let's see what you come up with. And she did, and it came up with an interesting synchronicity of a lifetime that I spent as a fighter pilot during World War II, who was shot down. That was the last one, the one that I have the most memories from. Yeah.
Wow. You might have known your father.
Well, if he was my wingman, and see, fighter pilots, wingman. So he was my wingman.
Wow. So did you figure out what your unfinished business was with him, that you came back and as his son?
Yeah, that was it, to come back as his son, and to I guess for some reason he wasn't around when I went in, when I was shot down towards the end of the war, and I wonder what happened to him. And so I guess it was to for us to make things right with each other, and he became my instructor. So I ended up getting a commercial pilot's license with him as my instructor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob has a question.
So do people come back because there's some unfinished business or something they have to do?
That's a great question. It's a great question, and there are different schools of thought on that. One will, the ones who believe in karma from that standpoint feel that, yes, we have to come back to learn particular lessons. But then there's another school of thought that we do it for the experience, that it is no different than signing on to act in a play. Okay, we're all, Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, all the men and women are merely players. And what we do in between lives, and that's another form of regression, the between lives regression, is we sit down and we decide, well, I think this time around, I'm going to be the bad guy, you can be the good guy, and I think we'll do this and do that, and you kind of map it out. And it's all for experience. And there's other people who believe that it's a blending of things. It's for to have an experience, but also to learn something, to learn a lesson. I don't necessarily subscribe to the crime and punishment theory. I don't think that if you do something bad in another life, you're going to be punished for it in this life. I think you get your punishment for in the life that you're in. That's my belief. What goes around comes around in this life, not necessarily in the next life. So people don't like to hear that, but we just don't like to hear that. Most people are very much into crime and punishment. They've got, well, who are you punishing? You're punishing a soul?
Yeah.
They're gone. Even Hitler, you got to look at it this way. Even Hitler, as despicable as what he did was, it was not his soul who did it. It was a body that did that, with a brain that did that. That's gone. Maybe that happened for a purpose. Maybe he made an agreement with people that this is what I'm going to be a fiend in this life. And from my being a fiend, everybody else on this planet is going to learn something. So the question is now, did we learn it?
Yeah, well, that.
But
But are people coming back because they need to learn something that they haven't learned in a previous lifetime? It's like, slow learners, so you get another chance.
Yeah, I find that. Yeah, I find that so much. Yeah, that people coming back and I need to and not repeat those mistakes. I just worked with a lady, and she was back east, and in one lifetime, I brought her ahead in the lifetime. I said, let's go ahead 10 years. And she didn't get anything. It was completely black. So I said, oh, that means she's dead. Okay, let's go back. So she died at 12 years old. 12 years old, got pushed down the stairs by her brother in that life. She was raped by her father and raped by her brother. And her brother pushed her down the stairs, knowing that she would probably die and break her neck. So she wouldn't tell anybody. Same thing happened to her in this life. In this life, she was raped by her father, raped by her brother, and pushed down the stairs at 12 years old, but she survived that.
Wow.
So why did that happen again?
Yeah.
She told me when I did the between lives regression with her that she had made an agreement, a pact. Well, the way the script was written was that they wouldn't. They were going to come back with her to learn a lesson and to make amends to her in this life. Guess what? They did it again to her.
Mm.
You know the old Scottish proverb: "Fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me."
Right,
Mm.
I do know that one.
Wow. So they didn't learn their lesson, but she evidently grew somehow.
Right, and now what she learned, what came, and this is only in the past week though, what came out of it, because past life regression is really a gift that keeps on giving, at least the way I do.
Yes.
I tell them that, I tell my clients that in the days and the weeks and the months to come, more and more information from this session is going to filter down from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind. So they come up with insights weeks later, and then I hear from them. They do get insight at the session, but more comes afterward. More comes afterward. And so she's learned that, as what happens so many times in rape victims, that it wasn't her fault.
Mm.
She's been blaming herself all these years.
Oh, thank goodness. That's beautiful.
I got a question.
Okay, we've got another couple of questions here, and this is Nick.
Okay, so I'll just go straight back to that, the rape victim. So you do hypnotherapy, correct?
Yes.
As well as past life regression. So say somebody comes to you who can't get past their rape and they want to go down the road of hypnotherapy. Where do you go to get to a crossroads and decide maybe we should go down a past life regression therapy versus just a standard hypnotherapy? Does that question make sense?
I don't accept those type of clients because there is a specialty of therapists who deal with rape. And
Okay, say
this came out in the past life regression. If she had come to me and says, look, this is what happened to me and this is what I want to explore, I probably would say, I think that you need to seek the help of someone who specializes in this. I don't want to touch it. I don't like to touch those particular issues. But it came up, so what could I do in the middle of the session? I had to help her through it the best time. Luckily, I did.
Gotcha.
Good question.
As I tell my hypnotherapy students, you don't hypnotherapy. I teach it to be used for what's called vocational avocational self-improvement, weight loss, cigarette smoking. I work with golfers. I work with soccer players, and mental and emotional issues. You can open Pandora's box. So whatever it is, you want to look for somebody who specializes in that particular area.
So we have another question here. Let's see if I can get this
Yeah,
around so
I'm
we
waiting
can use
for
the
that.
light.
Yep. I actually have a couple of questions. The first one, when you talked about mental health or those kind of issues, do you ever get somebody into a past life regression and then feel you shouldn't go any farther because of their mental health?
Most of the time, I don't even have to worry about that because I use particular safeguards that and I build in safeguards in my sessions that they will not go to a lifetime that is upsetting to them in any way. Or if they do find themselves in an upsetting situation, because sometimes they'll override that suggestions, they will remove themselves and observe it dispassionately, just as if they're watching a movie screen or a television screen, and be able to look at it from a clinical standpoint. I don't want them to experience the emotion per se, because then we get into the realm of what's called an abreaction, which is could happen in a hypnotherapy or in a past life regression, and you have to know how to handle them if they do happen.
Okay.
98% of the time, the safeguards I build in will not allow them to have experiences like that they should not be having at that particular time. Or if it does happen, it'll happen so that they observe it as from a third person standpoint. They're not reliving it, they're retelling. But sometimes it gets overridden, and when it does, you have to know how to handle it. And that's what I teach in my classes.
very good, thank you. My next question was, in your book, I really enjoyed the chapters where you talked about different religions and reincarnation, and I grew up Christian, but I always believed in reincarnation. And then I switched to Buddhism for probably a few years ago. But it was interesting in your book how you talked about Christianity, and that seemed to be the only religion that had to have wars and fighting over reincarnation, as opposed to, you know, Buddhism or Jewish or Hindu or any of those. So that just brought more light to my eyes as to why I switched to Buddhism from Christianity.
Well, you have to look at it this way. Why did the church, the Christian church, Catholic church as it was back then, first of all, they embraced the concept of reincarnation for the first 500 years of its existence. Then they turned against it. The time that they turned against it was when the emperor, I believe it was Justinian, was making Christianity the state religion of the empire, and it was a political issue.
Right.
If you believe in reincarnation, okay. Let's say if I believe in reincarnation, why should I go to church on Sunday and tithe 10% and pay 10%? Because basically what you're doing is you're paying off God to get into heaven. Why would I do that? I know that I'm going to come around again.
Right.
I'm going to get another at bat. Okay, so they didn't like that. You have to render to Caesar what is Caesar's, right? And so the emperor, actually, it was the emperor's wife who saw it. He wasn't too bright, but she was. She says, "My God, you can't let this be. You have to remove this. They can't be allowed to believe in reincarnation, or else they'll stop giving us money."
Yeah.
Remove that style.
Right, but I love how you know, the human side of people's greed gets into trying to change other people's opinions.
Usually does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So, and then my next question is, I enjoyed your chapter on the pre-birth planning. My daughter's pregnant and she's due in August. And I'm so excited when her daughter's born to kind of keep her open to being able to discuss past lives and things like that. So it's just, it was just good to read all about that.
Yeah, but just be aware. I'm going to say this to you. Tell your daughter to be aware when her daughter is what, 3, 4, 5 years old, just to listen to what she says. She may say things that seem so convoluted and totally fabricated, but that's when past life memories do come to the front.
Yeah.
That's when psychic experiences come to the front. I we had that happen with my brother-in-law who passed about 3 years ago, and his daughters were seeing their father. And he scared the hell out of them. They freaked him out. He turned up in the car with them. And now, you know, I guess the spirit got a good talking to by his daughter, so he hasn't done that. So, and also one of the girls is I think she's the 6-year-old one, is talking about when she was big and she lived in New York City and talking about her family there. Fantasizing, or are they past life memories?
Yeah.
When that happens, encourage them to talk about it. Oh, you're talking about it. Well, and what's that little girl's name? What's the mommy's name? Where do you live?
Yeah. Now, well, with my daughter, I knew she was pregnant before she told anybody, and I knew she was having a girl before she was tested. So I have some intuitive skills a little bit. So I'm trying to open up my daughter to the fact that I will be with her daughter a lot
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's
growing up and asking questions and
wonderful.
my daughter to let her daughter do her own thing.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Hmm.
But no, so that your book was fascinating,
Oh,
and I really liked at the end of it when you talked about all the positive things. But to, keep in mind of all the positive things that we have going on for us in our life too. So it was
absolutely.
fabulous.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
That is a good segue to my next question. Is what do you feel is the benefit of particularly regression therapy? And how does that help us live a better life in this current incarnation?
Well, the one thing I know that it did for me, embracing the concept of reincarnation, was it helped me get over a fear of death.
Oh, yes.
And the fear of dying, fear of death is the second biggest public fear. Do you know what the first one is? Believe it or not, fear of public speaking. No, and it's true. So I guess by that logic, more people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy.
I believe it.
But yeah, getting over fear of dying, understanding, being able to capture sometimes some of the talents and abilities that we had in a previous life and bring them over into this life. And I tell stories about that in my book, about some people I've worked with, and they've been able to release those hidden talents. And the one, where is she from? Oh yeah, this one is from at least from New York, as a matter of fact. This one is this just came out a few weeks ago. Had a decided lack of self-confidence, very down on herself, and I brought her back to a lifetime where her whole life it's called a hangover effect. It could be a trauma or a hangover. In her case, it was a hangover where her whole life was spent under somebody's thumb, and they berated her, and she had no self-confidence. And in a past life therapy session, I took her back to that. She saw why she was so non-self-confident. But then I also did an extra session of hypnotherapy. So whenever I do, past life regression can be done for a number of reasons. It can be done for simple information. It's an informational session. And that one I call my. I'm dating myself. I call it my Joe Friday session. Remember Drag Friday's catchphrase, just the facts, ma'am.
That's the fact.
So in this session, that's all we look for, are just the facts, who you are, where you are, what did you do, what did you eat, but all these things are eminently researchable and verifiable. A lot of things are not, your feelings from another past life are not verifiable, but the cold hard facts are verifiable. Then I've got the session which is called a karma connection session. We look at the past life that is directly responsible for whatever is going on at the moment in this particular life. So, and it's not necessarily the lifetime just previously lived chronologically. You can go back thousands of years, hundreds of years. And then we have the between lives regression. Okay, and that's where we look at the life plan and the life planning. And then there's a past life therapy, where we work on a specific issue. So like in this lady I told you about, the one with the self-confidence, problem, I did a separate session afterwards, about a week later, of hypnotherapy, nothing to do with past lives, of hypnotherapy for self-confidence.
Nice.
Because remember, a problem may have its genesis in a prior lifetime, but the results of that are what's happening in this lifetime. It's because of things that are in that person's brain in this particular lifetime. The neural pathways in the brain are reacting. The habit is from this particular lifetime. So we use hypnotherapy to help on that end too.
Excellent. Do you do any medical hypnosis?
I wrote a book on that years ago, and well, it's for the trade, okay, not for the public. And it's a training manual for hypnotherapists who want to work with cancer, lupus, or ALS, or high blood pressure, or you name it.
Wonderful. I wish I had studied some of that, but maybe another lifetime. And how about when you do any of these, either hypnotherapy or regression therapy, do you ever bump up against what we call spirit releasement?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't ready to accept that particular concept, but yeah, we run up against that, and there's specific techniques that we can do. Well, they vary from person to person, but they do.
What is
Yeah.
that?
What
Yeah,
is
what
that?
is?
So would you like to describe what spirit releasement is? Some of the people are newer here and don't understand what that is, but I thought
Well,
I'd
it can
that
mean
question
different
out.
things, but to me, it means that an entity has moved into a person and is not controlling that person, but is influencing that person in a was perceived to be a negative way. Because they're not going to complain if it's a positive way, but it's a negative way. You know, if the spirit of Howard Hughes wanted to move into me and teach me how to make $1 billion, who am I to go for it?
Exactly, yeah.
Go for it, Howard. But no, this would be where a negatively perceived spirit has entered a person. And there are specific techniques that we can use to release that spirit from that person, almost like an exorcism, really.
Even better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I love about that reminded me that out of hypnotherapy, regression therapy, spirit releasement therapy, there are so few side effects. You know how in medications you have to go through all these warning labels about all the side effects from different medications, but with this technique, the side effects are really positive.
Yeah, the positive, exactly.
Ripples out in so many ways.
Hate to watch TV anymore because all the commercials for the various drugs, and they listen.
Yeah, yeah.
Why would anyone take that? My God, the cure is worse than the disease.
Exactly, yeah. And so here's a question that I keep bumping up against, and I've not heard it in any of your conversations, but I wanted to bring it up to you tonight, is have you had anyone mention anything about a life on another planet?
I have not. Okay, I have not had anyone mention that. I have had people talk about life which they feel was Atlantis or Lemuria. Okay, whatever, but I haven't. And this is over thousands of regressions. Maybe because of the way I do it, you know, I don't leave the door open for them to do it. I'm more directive because in my particular technique. Now, if I could, you know, if I was looking for that and worded it correctly, then I would probably get more people on other planets. But then again, how do you validate that? Corroborate that, even if you're a Star Trek fan, you know, how do you validate that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but even Lemuria and Atlantis, what kind of information have you gotten about those two places? Are they, do you get a sense that those places were actually on Earth?
Yeah, the ones that I have done, I've got the sense that they were on Earth. Exactly. More Atlantis than Lemuria, now that I think of it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Bob has another question for you. Whoops, sorry, don't want me to make you dizzy
There we
here.
go. Am I in the picture? I can't see. So I had a psychic reading, gosh, 10 years ago. And in it, my father, who had passed away 30 years before that. And I mean, this was like in the first 30 seconds of the reading with someone who I'd never met before, knew nothing about. And standing next to him was my best friend of 40 years who had just committed suicide. So what would make, how is it that somebody can come forward like that? Because the explanation and description of them was like, oh my God, that's exactly who they are. And the things that they said, only I would have known. So how did that work versus past life where someone has come back? So what are they?
The memories of them have come back.
Yeah, sitting up in the cloud waiting.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, there are so many possible explanations from that. Only thing that I can think of is that, and I always thought this about past life memories too, in this sense, that these people who have this particular ability to connect with people on the other side, of course, there's a lot of them that are just scam artists, obviously.
Right.
But those that like what happened to you, okay, was gave you goosebumps and was spot on. And how would they know about that particular person unless they did research on that and were able to look you up on the web?
That wouldn't have happened with these two. Yeah.
Yeah, that was not a factor. I always felt that there are many parts of our body and of our brain that have not been yet discovered. I'm wondering if there is some kind of organ in the brain that makes us a better receiver, radio receiver. Okay. Okay. That there might be something in there, and they're always finding new uses or new purposes for particular parts of the brain, the amygdala, the parts of the cerebellum, the neocortex. Is there something there that is more highly developed in certain individuals? So I believe that we will eventually find a rational explanation for all of this, a rational scientific explanation for all of this that will tell us how they're able to do that, how they're able to connect. Their particular radio receiver is able to connect to what we now call the other side.
Right. Right.
And I think that's what happens with past life. Why do kids lose those memories at 5, 6, 7 years old? Talk to the kid who told stories about being Lou Gehrig.
Yeah. Yeah.
They ask him those questions today. He looks at them like they had two heads.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about that. The kid, the Leninger boy, he doesn't remember anything about that. The one who was who was the screenwriter for Gone with the Wind in another life, he doesn't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. They had those tales to tell, which were corroborated. But I can think of. I'm sure there are other explanations, but why is that person able to do it and I'm not?
Right.
I don't know that. I was doing a class one day right here in Huntington Beach, and it was attended by a psychic medium. And during the break, she says, while you were talking up there, I saw George Washington on one side of you and Marilyn Monroe on the other.
Oh.
I said, well, you tell George to take a hike because I want to get to That's true. That's what she said.
Wow, that's interesting. So I actually started my work and developing my mediumship skills before I got into regression therapy. And the plus of that was when I got into regression therapy, and I could feel whether a person was pulling something out of the collective consciousness or whether it was their past lives. I developed a tool to be able to do that. The same thing when I was doing a reading for somebody, a mediumship reading, I could feel for if this was their past life coming up or if this was an entity, that was showing up for them. So I was just guided, my guides that I worked with showed me how to do that, and it was pretty interesting. So that helps me get past the ones who do the confabulation during
Yeah.
the regression. You know, because even if they're doing that, I always wonder, well, out of all the things that they could have made up, why this particular thing? What
Exactly.
is the connection to what they're what's happening for them in this lifetime?
Exactly, Carol. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right.
there's a
And
purpose.
you're using the words I use. Of all the things that you could, even one of the techniques I use, I says, if I ask you to go to and you're not receiving a clear, independent vision of where I ask you to go, make it up. Because what you'll find when you do that, if I ask you to imagine a marketplace and you're not getting a marketplace in your mind, well, imagine a marketplace that you were once, that you went. You've been to a marketplace, you've been to a mall, you've been to whatever. Imagine that. You'll be amazed how that will morph into something that is more appropriate and applicable for what the session is all about. And also, and that's when people say, well, how do I know that I wasn't making it up? And that's when you say, well, you have 10,000 different things that you could have made up. Why'd you make that up? It has something to do with your psyche. You did it for a reason. That's
Yes.
nice with you. Else you wouldn't have done that.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. And you know, people are so afraid of their imagination, but I just found a quote recently about how imagination is, there's parts of your brain that are working on this thing that we call imagination. I can't think of the words of the quote, but I'll post that on the Facebook page. But how about, does anyone online have any questions? We've been hogging up the questions and I don't want to forget everybody that's there. Andrew, how about you? You got a question? Yep.
I sure do. When you use, I was interested in the part where you were talking about like for memory recall or for test taking and things like that. Could you talk more on that, please?
Well, hypnotherapy for that? Okay.
Yeah, no, is it using the hypnosis for data recall for tests and other things like that?
Yeah, everything you've ever learned is stored somewhere in your subconscious mind, just like it is a computer. So you can use the analogy of a computer, putting the when you get, for instance, use it for getting into exam situations. I can show a person a technique, or program a technique in hypnosis that when they get to the exam, they give an order to the subconscious mind to remember the details of what they studied, and then just go on with whatever they're doing, and put the mind on the to use a computer term, they're on search mode. Let the computer do the work. Let the computer do the search, and when it's ready, it comes up. It comes up to the conscious mind. That's one way that it can be used, and it can also be used to help people studying things, either college material, any kind of material. You can teach them how to study in the state of self-hypnosis, whereby the knowledge becomes more accessible and more available to them up on the conscious level.
Great question, great answer. And I was wondering, Andrew, if you if the getting over PTSD was part of your inspiration for asking that question to help you remember things.
For that one, no, it wasn't, but yeah, no, I was interested in, if you put people in hypnosis and then, like, I guess, read the study material, or if it was putting them in a state, like what he explained. No, he answered my question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, for study purposes, yeah, you can teach them a technique they'll be putting themselves into a state of self-hypnosis, and then they'll give them the cue to open their eyes and study in the state of hypnosis.
Great. And we have another question online from the label Samsung. I'm not sure who that is, but if you want to.
It's me.
Okay. Who is me?
Diane.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Diane.
Hi, how are you? So just to kind of reiterate on Andrew's question, as I got older, I had terrible test anxiety. And I did have my neighbor, who was a therapist, put me through a guided imagery with me. And she told me, she said, go to your happy place. She said, what's the place that you feel most at ease? And so that's what I did. She said, go to that place and relax. And you have all that knowledge in your brain. She said, someone that you know and trust will bring the answer to you. And so that worked for me. I mean, everybody's different, but that little guided imagery type of self-hypnosis worked quite well for me.
That's a metaphor. That metaphor worked for you. Someone who is not who's older and not more that conversant with computers. You can use a library image too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You go up to the library and give her the request, and she puts it into the vacuum tube, and the vacuum tube goes over to the back and waits for the book to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's fun. It's fun to get creative with things like that too. Find out what's the person.
Great question. And that made me wonder if it wouldn't be a good idea to use hypnotherapy to help us as we age. Because I used a technique with my mother, who was diagnosed with Schein-Drager's disease. And so in that, there were parts of her brain cells that were shutting down, that were controlling her bodily functions. So we come out of the neurologist's office, and that was what we were told. And I said, Mom, I don't know that I believe everything that he said. And because I've heard, through scientific studies, that just because some brain cells die, that there are many, many other brain cells that you can fire and rewire.
Take over the function of that. Now you can look at your mother, and you can use specific imageries. You can use the metaphor of the brain cells being like roots of a tree, and the roots of a tree have been blocked off by by a fence or something, and now it's seeking a new outlet. It's seeking a new direction. That's one thing that you could do too.
I love it. I love it. And guided imagery is so powerful. And in these stories that we tell ourselves, our bodies, our minds, and our spirits, those are really powerful, which is the main reason why I just love regression therapy so much. Yeah. So any other questions that anyone else has? Let's see, I have one more question. So I don't know about you guys, but I have learned a lot, and I'm like a sponge. I just cannot get enough of what I learned from this topic, and sometimes it sends me down other rabbit holes, but it seems to always bring me back to there's so much that we can learn from all of this. So my question that I want to ask you before we end, I want to give plenty of time for you to answer this, is so you've seen a lot, you've experienced your own, you've witnessed others, you've done deep research into religious beliefs about reincarnation. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned out of all of that?
The biggest lesson out of all the things?
Yeah.
That
Take your time. We've got
that life and lives are always full of surprises. That as much as that we think that we know, we really don't know. People, it's human nature to want to know why, have inquiring minds. Why is this? Why is that? They want things presented to them in black and white. And what I have learned when it comes to reincarnation is that you can't do that. People are constantly on my group. Okay, that's a group, by the way, same name as the book. Your journey was never meant to end. And they'll always ask questions. How many days does a spirit hang around after they die? How can you know that? It hangs around hangs around for 49 days. Okay, how long is it between incarnations? One person, one other person will give another answer. So, but I guess that's human nature to want to know that. The only thing that I can tell you with unreservedly is that the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. That's a fact. That's a fact I can prove. Okay, I could. Well, we won't get into this. Is I can prove that we can prove that the Earth is round and not flat. But there are, of course, there are people who believe that. But I can prove that if you take 2 units of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen, you'll get water. But everything that has to do with the esoteric is, by and large, unprovable. So they're philosophical concepts that we have to use right now as we know them. But keep in mind that sometime in the future, more better explanations may come along for what happens. In my book, I say that, Newton gave us a theory of how the universe works, and then Einstein came along, and then we got Hawking, who came along, gave us his own, and it's always going to be that way. So as much as we think we know, we don't know. And I believe, and maybe someday it will be knowable. Maybe somebody will be able to quantify these, or maybe we won't know until we cross the Great Divide. And maybe we, did you ever think that maybe we create our own realities? No, I know you say that. You say, oh yes, I create my own reality. I decide whether I'm going to be a soccer star, or I decide whether I'm going to write a best-selling novel. Maybe when we do get to the other side, we are able to create what we do when we decide to come back. Maybe we have more control over this thing than people tell us we do. I'll give you an example. How do you know that you can't reincarnate into the past? How do you know that when you, if you kick the bucket in 2023, you can't decide, I always liked the Roaring 20s. I'm going to go back and run a speakeasy back in the Roaring 20s. How do you know you can't do that?
I love that.
Time travel.
How do you know that time is chronological? You don't.
Yeah.
Listen to a guy like Albert Einstein always believed that all time exists as one, past, present, or future. And most quantum physicists nowadays seem to believe that. So. But as much as what I would say is, as much as we know, we really don't know.
So Smita had a question about what would you say about split souls,
Parallel lives.
or parallel lives?
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. That came up. That was one of the first people who promulgated that was a good friend of mine, a seminal figure in the field of this reincarnation, Dick Sutphin. Dick Sutphin wrote some wonderful stuff back in the 70s. I was president of the American Board of Hypnotherapy, and Dick succeeded me over there. So I knew Dick pretty well. He was a great guy too. And he was an ad man he worked on Madison Avenue when he wrote that book. I think you were born again to be together. I think that other than Bridie Murphy brought it to the public's attention. And so he was one of the first people to mention parallel lives. And if you don't know what parallel lives is it means that some people believe that you can be living right now. I can be living right here in this body, this soul, in this body in Huntington Beach, California, but I also exist in Bangladesh or some other place, and that I'm living a parallel life. And it came home to me doing past life regressions when I did the groups. I used to do, I do group regressions too. And like in one day before COVID and people are afraid to go out and get together, I would do four group regressions in a full day. And people would talk about something in a particular time frame. Yeah, this happened. It happened in 1990 or 2010. But then they'd give another story in another regression about another lifetime in the same time frame. So what do we get? Are we looking at complete fabrication? Are we looking at parallel lives where that person's soul exists? Or are we looking at parallel universes? I hate to complicate things for you people, but consider alternate universe.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. You know, that's the wonderful thing about all these questions that everybody has been bringing up, is that being open to explore the mysteries. I think the more that we put those questions out there, it looks like we're talking to one another, but we're also putting those questions out to the universe. And what my experience is, when we put good questions like this out to the universe, it comes back. Now, so everybody here, watch your things that are going to pop up on your YouTube, your, whatever. And I bet you there's going to be something that's going to address some of these questions that we have been talking about tonight.
I'll give you an example of that, if I may,
Yes.
before we close. Last week, I was a victim of a robbery. I, for all my lifetime, I'm not the particular religious person, but I've always won a St. Christopher medal. And I had one stolen from me about 2 weeks ago. And I reported it to the police. And I always liked the medal that my father had. It was a St. Christopher Protect Us on Land, Air, and Sea. It's a red, white, and blue, and it was popular during the Second World War. I always liked that, so I remembered it. So I was online looking at Amazon, looking at eBay. I looked at Amazon for a St. Christopher medal, and I found some that I liked. And then, I was making dinner for myself, and I says, let's try this. I says, hey, Dad, wherever you are, can you lead me to the medal that you had? Okay, made dinner, went back downstairs, opened it up, and there it was. There it was on eBay. The exact type of medal. So I ordered it, and that's what I'm wearing now.
Wow.
So I do believe that in that.
Yeah.
So then you can put those things out. And somebody up there is listening.
Absolutely. So that's your homework, to pay attention, and those things will come to you.
And don't be dogmatic. You consider all possibilities.
That's right. Yeah,
Lottery.
that's
As much
right.
as you think you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So one last question I thought of was, since you did the comparison religious thing and you have done so much study about reincarnation, how has your work in reincarnation affected your spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs? Are you able to hold them side by side, or does it make you evolve? Or
I am, because of the research I did in that, and having been raised as a Catholic and the product of so many years of Catholic education, but not a particular churchgoer. I looked back and found that yes, that was a basic tenet of the church for the first 500 years. So and how it got set aside, and you look at that, and I'm very easily able to reconcile that.
wonderful. I think that was a good question to end with, because so many people who start opening up to reincarnation, and yet their religious beliefs say, oh no, that's a sin. To be able to understand that you can look at it from both sides and feel comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even within your own religion, there are the diverging opinions on different matters, on different things.
Yeah. Beautiful. Any last questions before we wind up?
Oh, I don't want it to end.
I know. So what great wisdom, words of advice would you have, besides the be ready for the surprises. What wisdom would you like to share with us?
I would say this: live each and every day of your life as if it were your last, because someday you'll be right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At least for this lifetime. That is absolutely beautiful. This has been so much
I enjoy
fun.
this.
Yeah,
Thank
this has
you.
been so much fun.
Is the book on Audible? Is your book on Audible?
No, I haven't done that in Audible yet. I
Gotcha.
think that's probably the next project. Oh, well, actually, my next project, I want to attempt to duplicate research that was done back in the 1970s by Helen Wambach.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'd like to update that, for the 21st century. By update it, I mean, is that because she relied on researchers who, had to go into the libraries and stuff, but now with what we have, and I would like to duplicate that, maybe add some new stuff to that, but I think that's the next thing we want to do. So we'll be calling for volunteers.
Very cool. I have a paper that I'll send you about someone who did a PhD paper, I think it was, similar to the same order, but with a slight twist. So, and that was done not too long ago. So I'll send that to you.
Oh, please do. I believe I heard about that, but I haven't seen it. Please.
Yeah, Chris, I can't remember his last name, but I love her work. Helen Wambach is one of the early
If you don't know
pioneers.
anybody who doesn't know it, what was the first one was past lives, the evidence under hypnosis. And she wrote one after that to Life Beyond Life.
Yeah.
She's the lady who said at the end of the book, I got into this to disprove reincarnation. Now, after 2,000 cases, I don't believe that reincarnation exists. I know it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, great book.
Yeah, I love her work. I'm glad you brought her up because that would be awesome with all the case studies you have. That would be so awesome. And the reason why I found this other person's book was I have often thought about if I were younger, I would get my PhD to focus on the efficacy of regression therapy. And which is part of what she was talking about also. And then that paper popped. So I said, oh,
great. Yeah,
good.
please.
Someone's
Please
got
send me
it.
that link. We would love to see it.
Yeah, and someone who was at the Reincarnation Symposium last year, she's wanting to do her PhD on something similar. So I'll have to connect you and she.
Yeah, please
Well,
do. Yeah,
fantastic. Because when you put more heads together, you're going to get better results.
absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. This
My
has been
pleasure.
great. I'm going to spin the turntable around one more time. I know everyone would like to.
Thank you.
say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I have a ball.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for answering all the questions.
And look, well, please, I welcome you all to join my group. Your journey was never meant to end, same as the title of the book. And you'll find it on my
I think I
Facebook.
already did.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll put a
Well,
link to that on the Facebook page, the Reincarnation.
Also, maybe you could give them a link to my website. There's a lot of neat information
Yeah,
on there.
I was going to say we'll do that.
drkaloski.com, DR and my name, drkaloski.com. Easy to remember.
Yep, and also we'll put a link to your book.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully more people will be picking that up and reading and learning right along with the rest of us. So
Hopefully.
great.
Okay. You guys
Yeah.
have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye-bye
time.
now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My
Bye.
pleasure.
Thank you.